Welcome back, everyone. Before we dive in, make sure you drop your thoughts and the lessons you took from this story in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get into it. The champagne glass felt cold against Alexis Hughes's palm as she stood near a marble pillar, watching her husband touch another woman's lower back. Not a casual touch, not an accidental brush. His fingers lingered there, familiar and possessive, while Tanisha smiled up at him with the kind of intimacy that only comes from repetition. Alexis had suspected for months. The late meetings that ran past midnight, the new cologne, the way Darren's phone was suddenly always face down on every surface. But suspicion and confirmation are two different countries, and she had just crossed the border into a place where everything looked sharper, colder, more real. The ballroom of a historic hotel in Manhattan glittered around her, chandeliers scattering light over hundreds of guests pretending to care about childhood literacy while they compared stock portfolios and vacation homes. Alexis had helped organize this gala for 3 years. She had chosen the flowers, approved the menu, smiled until her face ached while making small talk with people who saw her only as Darren's wife. Now she watched him lean down to whisper something in Tanisha's ear. The younger woman laughed, fingers drifting to the diamond necklace at her throat. Alexis recognized it instantly. She had admired it in a Fifth Avenue jewelry store window 6 months earlier, mentioning it to Darren on a rainy Saturday. He had said it was too expensive, that they needed to be more careful with spending. Apparently, careful meant buying it for someone else. Alexis set her glass on a passing tray and walked toward the ladies' room, the emerald green silk of her gown catching the light with each measured step. Inside the cool marble sanctuary, she locked herself in a stall and pulled out her phone. Her hands did not shake. That surprised her. She had imagined this moment would feel frantic and loud, all broken breaths and spinning thoughts. Instead, she felt calm, almost detached, like she was watching herself from a few feet away. She opened her banking application and pulled up their joint accounts, all of them built on the foundation of the trust fund her late father had left her. With a few deliberate taps, she transferred half of everything into an account in her name only. Not illegal, not even questionable, just a woman protecting herself from a man who clearly thought she was disposable. When the confirmation notifications appeared, she exhaled and scrolled to the next contact. Natasha, she whispered, pressing the call button. Her childhood friend answered on the second ring. Lex? Everything okay? I need a place to stay tonight, Alexis said quietly. Can I come over? Always, Natasha responded without hesitation. What happened? I will explain when I get there. Alexis ended the call, unlocked the stall, and stepped to the mirror. The woman looking back at her was 32, beautiful by conventional standards, educated at Howard University, and about to become single. Her father, Bernard, had built a real estate empire before dying of a heart attack when she was 25. Her mother had remarried and moved to Houston, Texas with her new husband. Alexis had no siblings, no children, nothing tying her to Darren except 5 years of marriage and the slow death of trust. She walked back into the ballroom and threaded through the crowd, accepting air kisses and deflecting questions about where Darren had gone. She spotted him near the bar, Tanisha nowhere in sight, but Alexis had no trouble imagining the other woman waiting upstairs in whatever room he had booked for after the event. At their table, Alexis picked up her clutch and slipped the strap over her wrist. As she moved past Darren's chair, a small rectangle of plastic caught her eye, a hotel key card sitting half-tucked under his phone. The room number was printed in bold black text. She did not hesitate. She picked up the card, slid it into her clutch, and kept walking. The doorman hailed her a taxi, and she gave Natasha's address in Tribeca, leaning back as the city lights blurred past the windows. Her phone buzzed in her hand, Darren probably noticing her absence. Alexis powered the phone off and dropped it into her bag. That small click felt more final than the money transfer. At Natasha's penthouse, her friend opened the door in pajamas, took one look at Alexis's face, and pulled her into a fierce hug. He is cheating, Alexis said into Natasha's shoulder. With his assistant. I saw them together. The way he touched her. The necklace. The hotel key. Natasha's jaw tightened. That absolute piece of trash, she said, voice sharp. Come inside. We are opening wine and making a plan. They sat on Natasha's cream-colored couch, a bottle of Merlot between them, while Alexis laid out every detail. The late-night meetings, the evasive answers, the new cologne that smelled like hotel lobby soap. The glint of the necklace at Tanisha's throat. the key card now sitting in Alexis's clutch like a quiet confession. Natasha listened without interruption, her expression darkening. "What do you want to do?" she asked finally. "Because I know you, Lex. You are not the type to cry and forgive. You are your father's daughter." Alexis thought about Bernard, who had taught her that respect matters more than love, that actions speak louder than words, that a person shows you who they are when they think no one is watching. "I want him to understand what he has lost," Alexis said. "Not because I screamed at him in a ballroom. Not because I begged him to choose me. I want him to wake up one day and realize that the best thing in his life walked away and he has no one to blame but himself." Natasha's eyes sharpened. "Then we start tomorrow. First call is to Jerome Patterson, your dad's lawyer. He is ruthless and he adored Bernard." Alexis nodded. She finished her wine, borrowed pajamas, and lay in the guest bedroom staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow, her old life would end. The day after, her new one would begin, and Darren would discover that underestimating her was the biggest mistake of his life. For the first time in months, she did not dream about trying to fix what was broken. She dreamed about building something new. Back at the hotel, Darren realized his wife was gone around 1 o'clock in the morning. He called her phone 17 times. Each call went straight to voicemail. He told himself she had gone home with a headache. He told himself she had an early meeting. He told himself anything except the truth. Up in the room whose key card now sat in Alexis's clutch, Tanisha waited until 3, pacing the plush carpet in an expensive dress and that diamond necklace that no longer felt romantic, only heavy. When he never arrived, she left angry and confused. Meanwhile, in Tribeca, Alexis slept soundly in Natasha's guest room. The hotel key card remained tucked in her clutch, evidence she would never actually need because the truth was already burning down everything Darren thought he had built. Hours later, he stood in the marble foyer of their midtown penthouse, his phone pressed to his ear, listening to Alexis's voicemail greeting for the 23rd time. Her voice was calm and professional, the message she had recorded 2 years earlier when she still answered unknown numbers with optimism. "You have reached Alexis Hughes. Please leave a message." Not Alexis Sterling. She had kept her father's name after the wedding, saying it honored his memory. Darren had found it charming then, a quirk of an independent woman. Now it sounded like a warning he should have taken seriously. He walked through the apartment, noting what was missing. Her toiletries were gone from the bathroom. The framed photograph of her father had vanished from the nightstand. Her laptop was missing from the home office. The jewelry box her grandmother had given her no longer sat on the dresser. She had moved out with surgical precision, taking only what belonged to her and leaving no mess behind. In the home office, Darren's stomach dropped when he saw the filing cabinet drawer hanging slightly open. The contracts, financial records, and documents he had always dismissed as too boring for you to worry about were still in place, but the folders were not quite how he remembered. Papers sat just misaligned enough to tell him someone had been there. His hands shook as he rifled through the files. Everything was still there, account statements, corporate records, tax forms, but he could not shake the feeling that Alexis had read every page. Had she photographed them? Scanned them? His mind raced through the implications. Legal exposure, securities violations he had brushed off to his business partner, Reginald Whitmore, as victimless because everyone does it. His phone rang, jolting him. Reginald's name flashed on the screen. "We have a problem," Reginald said without preamble when Darren answered. "The Securities and Exchange Commission just received an anonymous tip about our offshore accounts. They are opening an investigation." Darren sank into his desk chair. "When did they get it?" he asked. 3 this morning, Reginald replied. "The email is detailed. Account numbers, transaction dates, shell corporations. Whoever sent it knows everything." Darren stared at the open filing cabinet, hearing the echo of Alexis's voice in his head, the way she had always asked polite questions about his work that he brushed off with confident answers. For years he had told himself she was not interested in the business. She smiled and nodded when he talked about mergers and acquisitions and complicated international deals. She trusted him to handle the money while she focused on charity work and yoga classes. That was the story he liked. The truth was that Alexis had a master's degree in business administration from Howard University. Bernard had taught her to read financial statements before she learned to drive. Before their marriage, she had worked as a consultant, analyzing corporate structures and exposing inefficiencies. She was not disinterested. She was observant. "Shut it down," Darren said into the phone, panic cutting through his denial. "Move the money. Close the accounts." Get everything back on shore and bury it in legitimate holdings. It is too late, Reginald replied. They're already freezing assets. Darren, did you tell anyone else about these accounts? Darren thought about Tanisha, about late nights in hotel rooms when he had bragged about offshore holdings and clever tricks, trying to impress a younger woman. Had he mentioned specific account numbers? He could not remember. I have to go, he muttered, ending the call and dialing Alexis again. Voicemail. He sent a text. We need to talk. Please let me explain. The message showed as delivered but never marked as read. By 10 o'clock that morning, Sterling Enterprises stock had dropped 4%. By noon, it was down 12%. Financial news sites picked up the story, analysts speculating about offshore holdings and potential tax evasion. Darren's corporate attorney called, voice tight, asking what exactly he had done. His accountant called, panicked about subpoenas. His mother called from Connecticut, asking if the rumors were true. Darren ignored them all, pacing the penthouse until the intercom buzzed. A courier handed him a thick envelope that felt heavier than its size. Inside were divorce papers already filed, seeking dissolution of the marriage on grounds of irreconcilable differences. The asset division was spelled out in brutal detail, half of everything calculated down to the dollar. Attached was a list of documents Alexis's legal team intended to subpoena: business records, financial statements, email chains between Darren and Reginald detailing their offshore strategies. Everything that would prove he had lied to investors and manipulated stock prices, unless he agreed to her terms. The proposed settlement included a clause stating that if Darren contested anything, Alexis would cooperate fully with federal investigators. If he signed without argument, she would claim ignorance of his business practices and offer no testimony. It was elegant. It was ruthless. It sounded exactly like something Bernard would have advised. Darren dialed the number at the bottom of the paperwork. The receptionist put him through immediately. Mr. Sterling, Jerome Patterson said, his voice smooth and unhurried. I wondered when you would call. I want to talk to my wife, Darren said. Mrs. Hughes has no interest in speaking with you, Jerome replied. All communication goes through me. This is ridiculous, Darren snapped. We can work this out like adults. You are absolutely right, Jerome said. Which is why my client has offered you very reasonable terms. Sign the papers, accept the asset division, and move forward with your life. She is blackmailing me, Darren said. No, Jerome answered. She is protecting herself. You involved her in your financial schemes by using joint accounts and putting her name on documents she never read. Now she is extracting herself from your problems. I would call that prudent. Darren hesitated. I need time. You have 48 hours, Jerome said. After that, we will assume you are contesting, and Mrs. Hughes will schedule a meeting with federal investigators. Enjoy your afternoon, Mr. Sterling. The line went dead. Darren hurled his phone across the room. It hit the wall and fell to the floor, the screen cracking in a jagged spiderweb. He stood in the center of his beautifully furnished living room, the space suddenly feeling enormous and empty. Alexis had not confronted him at the gala. She had not thrown a drink in anyone's face or made a dramatic scene. She had simply watched, collected information, protected herself, and left. Now she controlled every piece of leverage in a situation he had created. The broken phone buzzed where it lay on the floor. A text from Tanisha flashed across the damaged screen. We need to talk about our future. Darren stared at it and laughed, the sound bitter. Future, he said aloud. What future? His company was crumbling. His reputation was shredded. His wife had vanished like smoke, taking her love, her trust, and half of everything with her. While Darren paced, Alexis sat in Jerome's corner office overlooking Central Park, a cup of coffee cooling on the table beside her. Jerome, 63 and sharp-eyed, had silver hair and a reputation for dismantling opponents in court. Bernard had trusted him completely. He will sign, Jerome said, reviewing notes on his tablet. He does not have much choice. The investigation alone will consume millions in legal fees, and that is before any potential criminal charges. Your offer is his best option. How long before the divorce is final? Alexis asked. In New York, with uncontested proceedings, 6 months from filing, Jerome replied. We filed yesterday, so you are looking at July. 6 months. Half a year before she was legally free of Darren and everything attached to him. Alexis nodded, absorbing the timeline. What about the company? She asked. Sterling Enterprises shares in my name. You own 20% outright from the initial investment Bernard made 8 years ago, Jerome said. Those shares are yours, not subject to division. Right now they are valued at roughly 14 million, though that number is falling. Alexis considered this. Her father had believed in Darren's vision enough to invest, but he had always warned her to separate business judgment from romantic feelings. She wished she had listened sooner. I want to sell my shares, Alexis said. Find a buyer who will pay fair value and get me out completely. Jerome nodded and made a note. A wise move. Distance yourself from his mess. They spent another hour discussing property division, retirement accounts, and the summer house in the Hamptons that Alexis had never truly liked. By the time she left the office, her head throbbed with details, but her path forward felt clear. Natasha met her for lunch at a bistro in Soho, looking fierce in a royal blue suit. How did it go? She asked. Jerome thinks Darren will sign within 48 hours, Alexis said. The investigation has him terrified. Good, Natasha replied without pity. He should be terrified. She leaned in. Have you thought about what comes next? I know you. You are not going to sit around living off a settlement. Alexis stared at her water glass. Before I married Darren, I loved my work, she said slowly. I was good at helping companies fix what was broken. I gave that up because he said he wanted a wife who could focus on family and travel with him. I do not want to be that version of myself again. So do not, Natasha said. What do you want? Alexis lifted her gaze. I want to start my own consulting firm. Focus on companies that are struggling, the ones who cannot afford the big names. Natasha's smile bloomed. That sounds exactly like you. You need capital, office space, and clients. The first two you have. The third, she tapped her phone thoughtfully. Do you remember Leon Price? Your father's old business partner? Alexis nodded. I spoke to him at the funeral. He never forgot you, Natasha said. Let me call him. 2 days later, Alexis sat in Leon's office on the 20th floor of a building near Union Square, surrounded by exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows. Leon, broad-shouldered and kind-eyed despite his 70-plus years, shook her hand and studied her face. You have Bernard's look when you are about to do something big, he said. Natasha told me enough to know you are handling a bad situation with your head on straight. He gestured for her to sit. So, tell me why you want to start a consulting firm. Alexis had rehearsed a polished answer, full of market analysis and strategic positioning. Sitting across from her father's former partner, she abandoned it. Because I am good at it, she said simply. Because I know what it feels like to watch something fall apart and wish someone had shown you the cracks earlier. Because I spent 5 years making myself smaller to fit into someone else's dream, and I am done with that. Leon smiled. There she is. That sounds like Bernard's daughter. He pulled a folder from a drawer and slid it across the desk. I consult for several companies right now, he said. I am tired. I do not want to keep traveling, but I also do not want to leave them without help. If you are willing, I would like to refer them to you. Alexis opened the folder. Inside was a list of businesses, a manufacturing company in New Jersey, a regional retailer, a logistics firm, along with Leon's notes. These people need exactly what you can do, he said. Your father saved my career twice. Helping his daughter is not charity. It is me paying a debt. Her throat tightened. I do not want a handout, she said. Good, Leon replied. Because this is business. You will do the work, I will make the introductions, and everyone benefits. He paused. One more thing. I own this building. There is a suite on the 18th floor sitting empty. If you want it, it is yours at a reduced rate for the first year. Alexis blinked. Office space, clients, and rent I can actually afford, she said. You are making this very hard to refuse. You would be foolish to refuse, Leon said with a chuckle. You are ready for this, Alexis. You just need to decide you believe that too. She left his office with a signed lease, a list of potential clients, and something she had not expected to find that day: genuine excitement about her future. Within 6 weeks, Hughes Consulting LLC existed. Alexis signed the lease for the 18th floor suite, ordered simple but modern furniture, and hired a part-time assistant named Felicia whose resume was unimpressive, but whose interview had impressed Alexis with sharp questions and effortless organization. Leon introduced Alexis to her first 3 clients, and word spread quickly. Alexis worked 12-hour days, often more, traveling to warehouses and conference rooms, mapping out processes with color-coded markers. The exhaustion felt different from the bone-deep weariness of smiling through charity galas. This tiredness came with satisfaction. Each small win, A production line running smoothly, a manager thanking her for being honest, an email saying, "We did what you suggested, and it worked." Felt like a brick in the foundation of a life she was building herself. While Alexis poured her energy into the firm, Darren's world broke apart. The investigation expanded. Investors pulled out. The board voted to remove him as chief executive officer and brought in an emergency team to salvage what was left. Alexis saw the news alerts scroll across her phone screen and swiped them away without lingering. Consequences existed in the world. That was all. Hughes Consulting grew fast. Alexis hired Patricia, a veteran in supply chain management who had quietly saved more than one company while being passed over for promotions by men with louder voices. She added Marissa, a younger consultant specializing in digital transformation for traditional businesses, whose enthusiasm balanced Patricia's measured calm. Felicia recommended an intern from New York University named Jada, who turned out to be so capable that Alexis hired her part-time by the end of the semester. "This is going to sound strange," Patricia said one afternoon as they unpacked boxes in an adjacent suite Alexis had just leased. "But I have never worked anywhere that made me feel this valued." Alexis glanced up from her laptop. "It is not a risk hiring you," she said. "You are one of the best at what you do. If other firms could not see that, that is their problem, not yours." Jada grinned from the reception desk, carefully labeling folders. The office buzzed with energy, a mix of ambition and shared purpose. For the first time since Bernard's death, Alexis felt like she was standing inside something solid that she had built with her own hands. Natasha noticed the difference. "You glow now," she teased over dinner at a small restaurant in Brooklyn. "It is not just the success. You look lighter." "I am busy," Alexis said, smiling. "Being this tired does not leave much time to obsess over the past." "You know what else would help?" Natasha asked. "Letting someone new buy you dinner." "Absolutely not," Alexis replied. "I can barely remember to buy groceries. I do not have time for dating." Natasha only smiled. A few weeks later, she invited Alexis to a gallery opening in Chelsea, insisting it was a good place to meet potential clients. Alexis nearly canceled, buried under reports, but Felicia shooed her out the door. At the gallery, they drifted past abstract paintings while Natasha whispered commentary that made Alexis stifle laughter. "Do not look now," Natasha murmured. "But there is a man at 3 o'clock who has been staring at you for 10 minutes. Alexis glanced discreetly. A tall man in slacks and a button-down shirt stood near the far wall, a glass of wine in hand. He caught her eye and smiled, raising his glass. "That is Dante Morrison," Natasha whispered. "He runs an educational technology company." "Good for him," Alexis said. "I am still not dating." Natasha ignored her, lifted a hand, and waved him over. Dante crossed the room with easy confidence. "I hope I am not interrupting," he said, offering his hand. "I am Dante." "Alexis," she replied, shaking his hand. "And this is my friend Natasha." They talked about the art, the price of the wine, the way people pretended to understand pieces that were clearly confusing. Dante was funny without trying too hard, more interested in what Alexis thought than in impressing her. When Natasha excused herself to take a call, he turned back to Alexis. "I would really like to buy you coffee sometime," he said. "No pressure, just coffee." Alexis hesitated. It had been months since she left Darren. A part of her still clenched at the idea of letting anyone get close again. But something about Dante's open expression felt safe. "Just coffee," she said. "Just coffee," he echoed, smiling. They met a week later at a small cafe in the West Village. Conversation flowed easier than Alexis expected. Dante talked about building software that actually helped teachers instead of piling on more work. Alexis told stories about clients, anonymous enough to protect them but detailed enough to make him laugh. When he asked how she had started her firm, she chose honesty without full disclosure. "I needed a fresh start," she said. "I realized I was good at something, so I built a business around it." "That is brave," Dante said. "Or reckless," Alexis replied. "Some days I am not sure which." He grinned. The best things usually feel like both. As months passed, Dante's presence threaded quietly into Alexis's life. They kept things simple at first: coffee, occasional dinners, a movie here and there. When she worked late, he showed up at the office with takeout and listened while she vented about stubborn executives. When his company faced a tricky funding decision, she sat with him at his kitchen table, asking questions until he could see his options more clearly. One evening, over homemade pasta that actually tasted good, he asked, Can I ask what happened with your marriage? Alexis's hand paused around her fork. He cheated, she said after a moment. I found out. I left. Dante studied her face. I am sorry, he said. I am not, she replied. It led me here. She gestured around the apartment, meaning not just the space but the life she was building. He nodded, accepting that as much as she wanted to share. They did not rush anything. Still, there was a steadiness to the way he showed up, a reliability that began to feel like a promise even before either of them used that word. Professionally, Hughes Consulting hit another level when a regional retail chain approached the firm about a major restructuring. The contract was bigger than anything Alexis had imagined landing this early. This is what we have been working toward, she told her team at an internal meeting. It is going to mean long hours and tough conversations. If you want to sit this one out, say so now. No one said a word. They dove into the work. Alexis spent weeks visiting stores in different states, shadowing managers and listening to exhausted employees. She asked blunt questions and did not flinch at blunt answers. The problem, as she had suspected, was not pay. It was respect. When the project concluded months later, the client's costs were down, employee satisfaction was up, and analysts praised the company's surprisingly effective restructuring. Industry publications started mentioning Hughes Consulting as a firm to watch. One article featured a photograph of Alexis standing in her office, arms crossed, city skyline behind her. Darren saw that article in a break room at his new job, the magazine left on a table. He stared at her picture for a long time, recognizing the determined set of her mouth and realizing how completely she had stepped out of his shadow. Darren's new life in Queens was small and quiet. He rented a modest apartment and took a sales manager position at a mid-sized company, the kind of job he had once sneered at. Some nights, he sat on his couch scrolling through the news on his phone, seeing Alexis's name in articles about successful women in business. The feeling in his chest was complicated: regret, admiration, shame. Tanisha called him from a new number one evening. He answered, more out of habit than desire. I just wanted to talk, she said. See how you are doing. I am fine, he replied. You? Not great. No one wants to hire me. Everyone heard about the scandal. I thought maybe you could help. Darren laughed harshly. I can barely help myself, he said. Whatever you thought I could give you is gone. We had something real, she insisted. No, we had hotel rooms and lies, he said. That is not real. That is just two people being selfish and stupid. Do not call me again. He hung up and blocked the number, then sat in the silence of his tiny living room, finally understanding that every bridge he had once taken for granted was gone. In contrast, Alexis's life kept expanding. Hughes Consulting opened a second suite on their floor. Marissa flew back and forth to Chicago so often that Alexis began to toy with the idea of a future branch office there. Natasha joked that Alexis needed a personal assistant just to keep track of her other assistants. Through it all, Dante remained a quiet constant. One night, eating takeout on Alexis's couch after an especially long week, he said, My lease is up next month. I was thinking, we spend most nights here anyway. Maybe we should look for a place together. Something that is ours. Alexis's heart squeezed. The last time she had shared a home with someone, it had become a place full of secrets. But Dante was not Darren. He had never once asked her to give up anything for him. Yes, she said slowly. Let us look. Weekends became a blur of apartment tours. They rejected dark spaces, cramped floor plans, and rent prices, so ridiculous they both laughed. Eventually they found a 2-bedroom in Park Slope with big windows, hardwood floors, and a kitchen Dante declared perfect for experiments that will hopefully not poison us. Moving day was chaotic and joyful. Natasha helped pack, making jokes about Alexis's habit of saving every file folder she had ever touched. Felicia stopped by with coffee and a plant for their new place. Leon sent a framed photograph of Bernard with a simple inscription, For my daughter, who would have made me proud. That night, surrounded by boxes, Alexis and Dante sat on the floor eating Chinese food straight from the containers. This is it, Dante said, looking around at the half-unpacked room. Our place. Our life. Alexis leaned against his shoulder, the fatigue of the day mixing with something softer. I am happy, she said. He kissed her temple. Good. You deserve to be. Weeks later, on an ordinary evening that turned quietly extraordinary, Alexis looked at him across the couch, words pressing at her tongue. I love you, she said. Dante's eyebrows shot up. Then he broke into a grin. I love you too, he said. I have for a while. I was just waiting for you to get there. The vulnerability of saying it out loud scared her, but it also felt like stepping fully into the life she had chosen. Almost a year after they moved in together, Dante stopped with her in Prospect Park on a crisp autumn afternoon, leaves turning gold and red around them. I do not have a ring yet, he said, suddenly awkward, because I wanted to ask you first. Make sure you would say yes before I spent money on something you might hate. But Alexis, would you marry me? She thought about marriage, about what it had meant before, compromise turning into erasure, and what it meant now, partnership, honesty, two people standing side by side. Yes, she said. I want to marry you. They chose a ring together the next week, a simple emerald surrounded by small diamonds that caught the light without shouting for attention. Natasha cried when Alexis held out her hand to show her. Leon took them to dinner and gave Dante a look that carried all the protective energy of a father. She is special, Leon said. Do not give me a reason to regret approving of you. I will not, Dante promised. At Hughes Consulting, the team threw an engagement party in the conference room, complete with a crooked banner Jada had made and a toast from Patricia about building empires and still making room for love. 2 years after the night she had slipped away from the gala, Alexis walked back into the same historic hotel. The marble floors and glittering chandeliers looked exactly as they had that night, but everything else had changed. She wore a red gown this time, her engagement ring catching the light as she took Dante's arm. Hughes Consulting had donated a substantial sum to the charity, earning them a table near the front and a mention in the event program. Natasha, stunning in deep green, hugged Alexis tightly. How does it feel to be back? She asked. Like closure, Alexis said. They took their seats with Leon and a few members of her team. As speeches droned on, Alexis let her gaze sweep the room. Halfway through dinner, she saw him. Darren stood near the bar in a suit that did not fit quite as well as his old ones, talking to a man she did not recognize. He looked older, the edges of his confidence worn down. That is him, is it not? Dante asked quietly. Yes, Alexis said. Do you want to leave? He asked. She studied Darren for a moment. When his eyes finally found hers, surprise flashed across his face, and then something that looked like reluctant respect. She waited for hurt or anger to rise in her chest. Nothing came. No, she said. I do not need to leave. This is my event as much as his. During the program, the organizer thanked Hughes Consulting for its generous donation. Applause filled the room as Alexis stood briefly, nodding before sitting back down. The recognition felt entirely different from the attention she had once received here. It was tied to work she had done, not to someone else's last name. Later, she and Dante stepped out onto the terrace overlooking Central Park. The night air was cool, the city lights throwing a soft glow across the trees. Are you okay? Dante asked. I am more than okay, Alexis said. Seeing him did not hurt. It just reminded me how far I have come. You have built something incredible, Dante said. The company, your life, everything. I had help, she replied. Leon, Natasha, my team, you. But yes, I did the work. Inside, the band started playing. When they returned to the ballroom, they joined the dancing crowd. At one point, Alexis caught sight of Darren standing at the edge of the room, watching them. He lifted his glass slightly in her direction, not an invitation, just a quiet acknowledgement. She gave a small, polite smile and turned back to Dante, letting the past stay where it belonged. Across town in Queens that night, Darren sat in his small apartment, a takeout container cooling on the coffee table in front of him. He had seen Alexis on the dance floor, laughing with a man who clearly adored her. For a brief moment, watching her move with easy confidence, he felt something that surprised him, relief. She had not needed him after all. In the years since she left, his understanding of love had changed. It was not possession or control or taking someone for granted. It was partnership and respect and the willingness to show up every day as your best self. He had learned those lessons too late to save his marriage, but they sat with him anyway as he turned off the television and let the silence settle. There was no grand plan to win her back, no fantasy of a second chance. Just acceptance. He had lost something irreplaceable, and it was entirely his own doing. Alexis did not think about him at all as she rode home in a taxi with Dante, her hand resting comfortably in his. Back in their Park Slope apartment, she changed out of the gown and into soft clothes, wiped off her makeup, and looked at her reflection. The woman in the mirror was not defined by her divorce or by what had been done to her. She was defined by the company she had built, the people she had chosen, the love she had allowed herself to receive without losing herself. The next morning she woke early and went for a run through Prospect Park, the city just beginning to stir. As she ran past the lake where Dante had proposed, she thought about Bernard and the lessons he had tried to teach her about resilience and self-respect. She thought about the employees whose workplaces she had helped fix, the young consultants in her office learning to use their voices. But mostly she thought about what revenge truly meant. Once, she had imagined it as watching Darren's life fall apart. That had happened, and it had satisfied her for a moment. But real revenge, she realized, was this, a life so good, so full, so completely her own that his failures no longer had any power over her. Darren had cheated and lied and taken her for granted. She had walked away, protected herself, built something better, found love again, and created happiness on her own terms. That was the victory. She finished her run, lungs burning pleasantly, and headed home. Dante was in the kitchen, 2 mugs of coffee on the counter. "Good run?" he asked. "Perfect," Alexis said, stepping into his arms. The day ahead would be full of meetings and decisions, but whatever came, she knew one thing with certainty. She would face it on her own terms, in the life she had chosen, with a heart that finally, fully belonged to herself. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and share this video with your friends. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a powerful story drop.